My name is Jacob Gallegos, and this is my individual presentation. So today we're going to talk about the difference between static class variables and instant variables. You can tell it's a static class variable if it has static in front of it. A static class variable is the same with all objects. So when you have two objects, that static variable, will be the same for both objects of the same class. An instant variable is declared in the class and not the method. Static variable, once it's initialized, cannot be reinitialized and can only be changed within a method. Here's some examples of how to call static variables and non-static or instant variables. Here we have the crop control.cellLand, which we saw before was a static variable. When we call that, it is referenced to the same memory slot as any other object that you'd have of the same class. So when you put it in there, it'll always refer back to that same one. Now when you saw our instant variable that was declared up top, it cannot be reinitialized but can be manipulated in the methods. Here we have our getters and setters for a model. When we get the year, it refers back to that instant variable that has been initialized in the beginning. Now if we want to update that variable, we do it in the method such as set. Here we set the population, or we set acres owned, and that can change and update the variable. Now we're going to talk about the difference between array, array list, and enums and when to use them. An array is used when you have a fixed set of data that you can manipulate. You want to use this when you have maybe a list, but a set list that you want to be able to change, like numbers, or maybe a list of, maybe if you had a set provisions and you wanted to change what they're equal to, you can use an array. You want to use an array list when you want to be able to have a dynamic list. For example, in our provisions, we do not know how many provisions this person is going to have. If I want to add a new one, I can do provisions.add. I can even delete provisions. So if you want a dynamic list, use an array list. Now, if you need constants, such as maybe months of a year, that we know it's always going to stay the same and never be updated, we can use enums. This makes it so that the variables that you put in your enum are constant and cannot be changed. Accessing arrays can be tricky, but once you get used to them, they're not very hard at all. Arrays always start at 0. In my code, I've demonstrated how to iterate through an array list. This array list is full of objects, and we want to be able to go through each object and get the items, the item model, which is the name and the number. So we have a for loop that goes through the array list and gets every item out of it. And when we print it out, we can call item.getName or item.getNumber and be able to reference each individual object that was stored into the array list. Now we will talk about propagating and catching errors. When you get an error that your code is not expecting, sometimes you'll get an error that will crash your code. We don't want that, especially if we're working with users who don't know what to put into the code. They might make mistakes, and crashing the code will be very insufficient. So now we will try and catch error handling. We will try the function and let the user enter into the function. And if there's an error, we will catch it by the crop exception event. If we catch the error, we will get a message that says, "I am sorry, master, I cannot do this." And in the other code, we will see that there's a personalized message due to the error, and we will also print that out. For example, if we put a negative number in, we will get, "I am sorry, master, I cannot do this. You cannot enter a negative number, print something, or enter something else," and then be able to go back into the code. This enables it so we don't have to crash the code every time a user enters the wrong number. But we can catch the error and print out and tell them exactly what they need to know. A character stream class versus a byte stream class. Character streams are for when you want to be able to print or enter in data or read data, so write or read, character by character. This is nice when you have a big text file, but it only has characters in it. Now, if your characters or your text file has numbers in it or other data or raw data, you want to use a byte stream class. This can read data such as binary. It can read in or read out. Most likely, when you read out of a file, you will read out a character stream so that the user can understand what he's reading. And when you write into a computer or into a saved file, you want to write in binary so the computer can understand. Here we will talk about the print writer and how to write character data into an external file. The reason why we use print writer in this is because print writer can change both string text and integers and floats into readable text. So when we have a dynamic file that we want to read in, we are able to through print writer. As you can see here, we try print writer and we print out into the file. We get the saved path and we print out into that saved path. As you can see here, we can print the header and we can print in what we're printing out. In this case, it would be like a list item such as provisioner tools, and this will read it into it. Now we will go over a sample of my code. Okay, here we will start a new game. We will enter our first name. Now you see it has a welcome message and we can get going into the game. We can view the map, view lists, move to a new location, or we can manage crops. So let's view the list. Let's say we want to view the provisions in the storehouse. We can save our provisions or we can display them. Now we see what provisions we have. Now let's go and manage our crops. As you can see here, it prints a crop view that lets us know what we should do for our next move. So let's say we have lots of wheat in store, so we can feed our people. We can give them 20. Now let's say we want to sell land. We can come out and sell 10. Or we can buy land. We'll buy 20. But we do not have enough people to work the land. So that is a try-catch function. The game goes into that for 10 years. And there we go to the main menu.